keep doing the same thing. Why don't we change it up a little bit and see what happens? There might be a better way. And sometimes it's just a matter of time and timing, making people aware. So the next page is about stressing as a factor of life. Our kids are not really in tune to that. We can teach them how to breathe. We can teach them visualization, exercising, eating better, and unbelievable sleep. They don't get that. They just keep going. And what happens is there's something called adrenal failure. The adrenal gland is in your back. It's the gland that actually is telling you which hormones you need at any given time. But if it's constantly doing this, trying to figure out, the chronic stress situation, it tends to fail, and it overshoots the cortisol, which doesn't let them shut down, which means you can't sleep at night because your cortisol levels are spiking up at the wrong time of day. And then you're exhausted during the day, and you have all these projects to do, and you can't manage them. This is also a problem of the instant generation. They have constant information barreling down on them. They're tweeting, they're Pinteresting, they're Facebooking, they're watching TV, they're playing video games, they're trying to do sports and homework all at the same time. I don't know really how any of us could possibly do it. I know when I was growing up, the fact that my 5 siblings and I were sharing a telephone line separate from our parents was a huge deal. So nowadays, it's just like, I used to punish them by saying, or threaten to punish, it never actually worked. Take away your cell phone and your computer. And one day my daughter came back to me, she goes, well, that'd be kind of nice, I could read. I'm like, okay. Never mind, I'm going to have to come up with something better. So there's a lot of things that contribute to our kids' stresses, and, one of the things is friends and the social aspect, peer pressure. And I like to point out, if you haven't seen this is October of 2011's National Geographic. Go to the library, check it out. The father who writes this article starts off by saying, well, my son gave me a call from the police station, and he was found to be going 113 miles an hour outside of Austin on a road, just wanted to see what it felt like. And his dad's going, did you think about maybe the rabbit jumping out across the road, or a piece of tumbleweed, or whatever? And he's like, yeah, no, not really. I just wanted to go fast. And I didn't have my friends with me. I was all by myself, which is another point in this article. He talks about peers, when they're together, tend to do more risky behavior. And he also mentions that the problem with teens has been around for ages. He quotes Aristotle and Shakespeare as having the same problems with teenagers that all of us do. They're just kind of wild children. They sometimes shoot off in different directions. So trying to understand them is a big portion of when to lighten up and when not to, and keeping an eye on them. And we'll get to that in just a minute. So a psychology class last year, actually all the psychology classes last year here, did a rating system on what was the most stressful thing in their world. And the irony was, I was at LO's meeting last month when OHSU had a grad student there presenting about the teen brain. And she was saying, well, in Portland, parents rated number 5. And I went, well, how come? That's not right. We were number 1. So again, where does this all correlate? We're number 1 here. They're number 5. What is so different about being, 10 miles away? It just got me thinking. I have no answer. I'm just saying, if I raised the awareness, there's got to be something somewhere that we need to be paying attention to. I think homework and teachers came in after that, but I have an idea for that as well. We'll come to that. Too much and not enough in their worlds. There are some kids that go from 6 in the morning till 10 or 11 at night, and there's no breathing space. They don't have 20 minutes just to relax and read that book. So obviously I'm guilty of that. I don't set up, this goes back to the 2 different children. I don't set up anything for child number 2. Child number 2, she pushes that button in the morning and she's off like a racehorse. I don't know where it came from. But I'm constantly the one going, you might want to slow down a little bit. You're only a sophomore. You still got to get through junior year. You've got these things lined up you want to do. want you to burn out before. Now, the first one was like, not so much. Don't feel like really signing up for anything. Can we sign up and maybe, I know, I'll create a ping pong club at Lake Ridge. They don't have that. And I thought, well, there's some major ambition. It's just the way they think. They don't, she really didn't care about all the options here. This other one wants to be ASB. She wants to be on a cappella. She wants to be on company. She wants to be in the play. She wants to be on lacrosse. She wants to do all these things. And it actually is exhausting to watch. So, I was talking to Jen earlier. She says, my kids, who are maybe 7 and 10, they have anxiety. And she said, I'm probably the only principal out there saying, go for a C. And I'm the one who's always saying, go for a B. So it's making a mistake, and it's not always an A. To me, an A, by the end of a semester, fantastic. If you don't get an A on every single test, there's always an opportunity to compensate and make up for it later. And the fact that a whole weekend can go by and all she did was study actually is depressing. That means that there was a lot of life that this teenager didn't get to do. She didn't go to a movie, or she didn't go, visit a friend, or she didn't have time to babysit, or whatever it is outside of school. So one of my quotes that the older daughter came up with on Pinterest was, you win some, you learn some. And so, again, it goes back to learn from what you didn't do on that test and see how you can improve later. So what happens is, if you have the mentality that you don't need to have an A, and you're focusing on simply relaxing a little bit, your brain is getting more blood flow, it's relaxing, and it's easier actually to get an A, because you're not forcing that information into your head. You're letting it come in, and it comes in more naturally. So it's funny that people who go for a B+ end up with the A anyway. So I'm not saying forget A's altogether. No,
Okay.
teacher is in the library, I think.
Gran, is Gran here?
Nope.
No.
It's So, anyway.
Oh, what a compliment.
I feel so good now, too. Yeah, I did.
Talk about stress. You can see your face.
So anyway, making a mistake actually leads to success. Neurolinguistic programming is often used in this as a sales tool, but it's learning the language of the people you're talking to or with and adjusting accordingly. There are visual learners, audio learners, kinesthetic learners. Your child may or may not be learning as well from a teacher. We have a lot of fantastic teachers here, so they may not be teaching to your child's way of thinking. And so a lot of times, if a child understands the fact that they are kinesthetic, maybe auditory, we can adjust to that. And I remember Mr. Zerker over at now Lake Ridge Junior High teaching photosynthesis to his class, and my daughter came home and said it was the most fantastic experience because he actually had them acting out photosynthesis as he drew on the board, so that the visual learner and the kinesthetic learner were seeing exactly how photosynthesis worked. And everybody in the class got 100% out of that experience. So it was really a great tool to understand that, almost all of our teachers have master's degrees. So they've probably learned that. The gray mass in the frontal lobe, and I'm sure everybody here is tired of hearing about the frontal lobe. Because we talk about it at nearly every meeting we talk about the teen brain. Doesn't finish till they're 25 or 26. So if your kid or somebody else's kid, I've actually heard somebody say they didn't really like a child at 17 or 18. That kid was just the worst. I was probably that kid. I was a nightmare. But what happens is we grow up. Finally, we grow up. You're talking about organization, cognitive skills, planning and problem solving. All in the frontal lobe is not really, they're not firing all that information at any given time until they're older. So you may not like them so much now, but 5 years from now, 10 years from now, totally different human being. And it's phenomenal if you let them go. Let them go for a while, come back and visit me. I remember a story where somebody told me that they had gone to see a friend, and the kid left for college at 18. He said, there wasn't a conversation for the life of him through the entire 4 years. Came back, started a job. One day at 25, he comes in the living room. He goes, "Hey, Dad," sits down. They have a full-blown conversation, deep and meaningful. And the dad looks at him. He's going away and wanted to know where he'd been the last 10 years. I was like, who was that person? So, again, patience is a virtue when it comes to our kids and their brains. If you go to the next page, we're talking about the autonomic nervous system. It comes in two parts. You have your sympathetic emergency room and the parasympathetic. Parasympathetic is really where your hands are relaxed, you're like this. This is how you can function best. When you're in the sympathetic or the emergency room, that's really only supposed to be 3 to 5% of any given day. Your cortisol levels will spike. And it's like, okay, you're driving down the road and you happen to glance up in the rearview mirror and you see police lights and sirens going and you're like, I thought I was doing okay. And you freak out and your heart starts to pump and you pull over. It wasn't you. They went straight past you to somebody else. But it's that feeling of and that heart beating and the sweaty palms. That is when you're in the sympathetic room. Okay? That is only 3 to 5% of your day. That is not all day long. And that is what wears on our tissues in our body and causes, the initial stroke. And it has long-term consequences, by the way, that they find. But if you want to recognize it, going to bed at night with your hands clenched, waking up with your hands still clenched, if you have a hard time going to sleep at night, if you suffer from headaches or muscle aches constantly, typically shoulders, neck is where we as adults absorb it, clenching your teeth, grinding them, all signs. It can cause exhaustion, leads to depression. You still have those anxieties, you have the high blood pressure, it leads to illness, and actually CDC's determined 85% of our illnesses are emotion-based. So if you grab it in the beginning, and that is the net of what hypnosis and hypnotherapy is we don't look at depression, but we see what causes that depression in that person. What can we do to change it? So for my daughter Anna, I ended up changing from gerontology, the study of aging and healthful living, to hypnosis. I was hypnotizing her to increase her serotonin levels, and so that meant more exercise. And literally in the middle of the first session of hypnosis, she starts pedaling her legs. And this is, again, the kid who wanted to have the ping pong club. So, a little different. She got up and she said, "That was great. Can I go walk the dog?" Oh, yeah. So, big difference if you can increase your serotonin levels. And the easiest way to do that is through exercise. So, words matter. Sticks and stones break your bones. Verbal abuse. I'm familiar with it. A large percentage of my life, verbal abuse. Countering that comes in the form of positive affirmations. Becoming a hypnotherapist, certainly, because I teach other people to think in a positive manner. And the first step of self-hypnosis is learning how to say every night before you go to bed 10 times. Every day in every way, I get better and better. And you say it aloud 10 times, and you're saying it to yourself. You don't have to say it to anybody else. But in a quiet place before you go to bed at night, it installs in your brain a positive thought as you're going to sleep at night. And within 7 days, typically, you'll notice things look different and feel different in your world because you're putting in a positive attitude before you go to sleep at night, and it will relax you and help you get to where you need to go. Now, I used to know, before knowing what affirmations were, my kids growing up, we'd be driving to school, and I had one this sleepyhead and one who was all revved up and ready to go. And Palisades is only a couple of blocks, so I didn't have a whole lot of time. But we'd always say, "Who's going to make it a good day today?" And the answer was always me. Who's going to make your dad's day a good day? Who's going to make your mom's day a good day? Who's going to make your teacher's day a good day? Who's going to make the dog's day a good day? How about your friends? Go through the entire list, and then high five. And we used to joke about it, but in reality, that affirmation made them realize their attitude projected outward could change a person's day.